ChristopherMedia.net.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. That this happened faster than usual is due to the urgency of this pandemic and the extraordinary collaboration of dedicated scientists around the world.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfacts. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS. It's okay to have questions about getting vaccinated for COVID-19. Wherever you are in your decision, the New Jersey Department of Health can help. Watch New Jersey doctors discuss important COVID-19 vaccine information at nj.gov/health/vaxfacts. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS.
Remember before COVID-19, when we could go to shows or celebrate in person or have family gatherings where the only worry was when someone was going to talk politics? Let's get back to that. Let's get vaccinated. COVID-19 vaccines are safe, effective, and free. Sure, we'll have to keep wearing masks for a while, but you know what? This is the start. Go to covid19.nj.gov/vaccine to register for your vaccination. Remember traveling somewhere? Anywhere? Yeah, let's get back to that.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beer Nuts. JR here. I'm actually on vacation just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. Very happy to have a special guest with us from Fargo Brewing Company tonight. So we're going to introduce our Beer Nuts, and then our special guest will take over and tell us a little bit about the brewery. But let's introduce everybody. And before I do that, as always, we always want to invite all our listeners, please crack open a cold beer. We're not a bunch of pretentious beer snobs. We just want to introduce more good people to more good beer. So whatever you're drinking, it's fine with us. So we're going to start out in Los Angeles on the West Coast with Steve V. Welcome back, Steve.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back. I was telling everyone before we started recording, I missed all the voices, and it's been a long time. So I'm excited to get back and excited to taste some beer from Fargo.
Amen. So everybody already has heard my introduction, so let's introduce our guest. We're going west to east, and I believe Fargo is next in the rotation. So welcome, Aaron Hill from Fargo Brewing Company.
Hey guys, yeah, glad to be on. So you want me to introduce myself? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, go ahead.
So my name is Aaron. I am a Pisces. I do actually enjoy long walks on the beach, although I live in Fargo, North Dakota, so I don't get to walk on the beach very often. So I can just kind of, I'll give you I'll try to be really brief about our story. It's kind of a long story, and I could be very long-winded. But basically, it starts 12 years ago. There were no breweries in the entire state of North Dakota. And, there was about a dozen in Minnesota and probably about 10 in Montana. And I don't suppose any of you gentlemen have been to Webo, Montana, have you?
No. Nope.
No. Okay. Any guess at what the population of Webo, Montana would be?
100.
It's pretty close. I think it's 450 or something like that. So there happens to be a brewery in Webo, Montana. And it's part of the thing is like, well, how is there a brewery in Webo, Montana? But there's not one brewery in the entire state of North Dakota, let alone the most populated city in North Dakota that has 3 universities. And then you kind of think about, well, like, wow, maybe people in North Dakota don't drink beer, maybe that's it. And it's like, well, consistently North Dakota ranks, it's like between Wisconsin and maybe South Dakota, but like North Dakota consistently ranks in the like top 1 or 2 in consumption per capita. It's like 43 gallons per person annually of beer. And so you're like, okay, so there's a lot of beer drinkers and there's no breweries. It's like, one of my good friends from high school, his name's Jared. He ended up moving to Portland, Oregon, and his wife went to dental school. He ended up going to graduate school, got his MBA with a focus in finance. And when he and his wife would come home for like holiday break, they would load up their car full of Jared loves Hair of the Dog. and they would basically full sail, basically a wonderful array of beers brewed out in Oregon. And he would do these like beer samplings, beer tastings. When they finally moved back to Fargo, I asked him, I was like, well, what are you going to do for work? And he's like, I don't really know, but I made a business plan in grad school to start a brewery. And he said, there's just this cool beervana culture in Portland. And he said, I think that would be a really cool thing to do in Fargo. And, he sort of likes to say he invited me, but I kind of invited myself. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I bartended after college, got interested in beer, wine, and liquor. You guys understand it. Some people laugh when I say that, but no, I legitimately, genuinely got interested. 22 years old. I'm like, like, how is this made? What does that taste like? What happens if I mix these two things together? And it really kind of interested me. So I was doing fundraising at the time for our local United Way, and I kind of started talking to people I knew and thought people would say we were idiots and we were crazy. And it was kind of the opposite. People went, interesting. That sounds cool. Let me know if you need investors. And, so I would go to Jared and I'm like, hey, I think we might be onto something here. We were both, I think we were 26 years old probably. And we had one very small problem, of course, in starting a brewery. And maybe one of you gentlemen will guess what that problem was. Anybody guess?
Licensing?
Well, yeah, that's
money.
Money, yeah. Neither of us had any clue how to brew beer.
Oh, wow.
That helps.
We had no clue. We were like, whatever, we'll figure it out, right? That's just a detail in starting a brewery. Jared tried a few homebrew batches, didn't go so well. And we were like, well, at this time it's just a pipe dream anyway. Well, in the meantime, Jared was out to dinner one night and happened to run into one of the original founding members. He went to high school with Jared's brother-in-law. Weird connection, but he had mentioned that he and his older brother were looking at starting a brewery, and his older brother was living in the state of Washington at the time, so he went to a college locally in the Fargo Moorhead area, went to Montana, ended up in Idaho, got his graduate degree in biology. He's a fish biologist, and then at the time we met, he was living in Washington near the Bonneville Dam. And he was doing research on the spawning habits of salmon upstream or something like that. But he was moonlighting at a brewery out there, and he was kind of the beer scientist, the beer geek. And we all met on the phone. It was the winter of 2009. We like to refer to that now as the Christmas Beeracle. And we kind of realized, okay, the two brothers can brew the beer. Jared's the finance money guy, call him the spreadsheet nerd. And then I'm the sales guy, basically. I'm the politician, the handshaker. I do podcasts. And so kind of went, okay, maybe we're onto something. We for about 2 minutes, we talked about what do we think we should call it. And we very quickly settled on Fargo Brewing Company. Again, there were no breweries at the time. We wanted to sort of, stake a claim that like, hey, let's name ourselves after our community. The name Fargo, whether we like it or not, when we're from the area, people recognize the movie Fargo, which then turned into a TV series. And we're like, let's just take advantage of that. So Chris, the older brother, packed up everything in Washington and he moved to Fargo. And then we started brewing in Jared's garage every Saturday, like most breweries start. And officially became the Fargo Brewing Company in 2010. So we filed the paperwork and became the Fargo Brewing Company. And then, so we're all 26. None of us have any money. None of us have any parents who started a business. We really don't know what we're doing other than we have those two guys had a basic idea of, how to brew beer and things like that. So we ended up working with a brewery in Wisconsin. We contract brewed with them. So if people aren't familiar with contract brewing, that basically we gave them the recipes. We had to buy kegs, shipped kegs to them. They brewed it, put it in kegs, and then we had to pay to ship the kegs back to Fargo. And then we went out and sold it locally. So we did that for about a year and a half, kind of built the business. And because we weren't sure, we're like, I don't know, maybe there's a reason nobody started a brewery in Fargo. And we wanted to kind of test the waters and found out very quickly that, okay, no, people are pretty excited about this. We named our very first beer Wood Chipper, which I believe one of you gentlemen is going to try. And that is a nod to the movie Fargo. And again, we just kind of leaned into the fact, we're like, if people recognize Fargo, we're going to call a beer Wood Chipper. And we contract brewed for about a year and a half, and kind of showed that we could sort of build the model, and then we took that and went out and raised some money and borrowed a hell of a lot more, and we are somehow still alive 10 years later.
Awesome. Great story. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think we're thirsty to try some of Fargo Brewing's beers. We got 3 guys in Michigan. Let's go introduce them, and then one more beer nut in Georgia, and then let's start tasting some beer, gentlemen. So, Doug out. Who you got with you in Michigan?
All right. Well, this is Doug out. I'm in Clawson, Michigan, and I'll pass the phone off in just a second. Yeah, I don't care. My last Untapped check-in was a beer called Cantankerous Scooter Bourbon Barrel Aged Maple. And it was an old ale that was brewed off of a recipe that Founders put out. And I aged it in a Motor City gas bourbon barrel and added maple syrup. And I think Christopher has one of those too. We'll be going to him shortly. But in the room with me is John Golden.
Hi, this is John. And currently I'm in Clawson, but I'm from Royal Oak, Michigan. And actually, my last check-in Untapped was the same as Doug, but since he already stole my thunder, I'll go back to the previous one, which was a Sierra Nevada Brewing Company Trip in the Woods Ovila Abbey Ale. Delicious beer. It's boozy Belgian-y brown ale. I know Belgian-y and brown ales don't usually go together, but this was a very delicious beer. So we'll go. Who else do we have in Michigan now?
Christopher.
Chris, I'm in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. Yeah, it is good to be back. It's good to hear everybody's voices. I got to see Doug for like 5 minutes today. It's nice to have human contact. It's been a crazy year, and I'm excited to drink this beer. I might have already drank a little bit of mine, but let's do this.
And Christopher, you have that same beer that we just said. That was the one I gave you. I think it's got the green cap.
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's one of Doug's awesome home brews.
Oh yeah.
We'll save that and give it a go.
We'll save that one for the end because John Hill is with us from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome back, John.
Yeah, it's good to be back, guys. It's been too long. I'm John. I live in Atlanta, work in Atlanta, originally from Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple. Yeah.
K-State.
Go Cats. And my last Untapped check-in was we have one of our great local breweries, Orpheus Brewing, that's also conveniently close to me, and they had their anniversary, 7th year anniversary this weekend, and I picked up a bottle of Today I Choose Violence, which is boiled for a day or two, 28 months in bourbon barrels, ghost peppers, cacao nibs, cinnamon, vanilla, and nutmeg, and it's basically motor oil, but it's delicious.
All right, well, awesome. And I didn't really mention my Untapped check-in. I didn't think we're doing that tonight, but I did check in last night. Warrior Hazy IPA from Greenwood Brewing, local brewery here in Phoenix. Well, let's talk Fargo Brewing because I played golf today in 105-degree heat, and all I've been thinking about all day was this can of Czech Pilsner in front of me. So I'm popping that open now. I'm gonna taste this. And who else has Czech Pilsner? I think Steve V. You in Los Angeles. It's great to be coast to coast tonight too. LA
Yes.
all the way to Georgia, and we got that southern border covered down here in Arizona, and the northern border covered in North Dakota and Michigan. Really, so good national posting tonight, gentlemen. Let's drink to that.
All right.
So whoever has the Czech Pilsner, let's pour it and enjoy it, and we'll ask Aaron to tell us a little bit about it while we're pouring ourselves a drink.
It's a Czech Pilsner.
There must be size hops in it then.
It's I don't really know if there's a ton to talk about. It's not aged in any barrels for months. Nope. Or there's no cacao or anything super exciting, but I mean it's Bohemian Pils malt, some Carafoam, there's Magnum and Saaz. And of course we can't exactly replicate the water, with the beer like this. And I think, most, hopefully, home brewers or people who are more familiar with beer will understand that the water that you use is extremely important. And we actually are now finally getting our RO system installed, but Fargo water is not always the best water to use. We do filter it with charcoal. We do the best we can, but it's not perfect. But yeah, otherwise, this is our attempt at the best we can do to replicate, a Czech style Pilsner.
Well, I remember my first visit to the brewery. This was the first beer I asked for when I saw your list, because it's a style that I enjoy, and some of the beer nuts on the show, particularly our Michigan guys and myself, are home brewers, and I really like the fact that a lot of the beers on your list were, traditional styles, nothing fancy, like you said, not a whole bunch of, different configurations of hazies with different hop combinations. Just, sometimes it's nice to have a nice basic, like you said, it was kind of simple to describe this, but at the end of the day, I think it's got a great flavor. One of the things you look for in this style is a nice clear, and it's clear as can be, great appearance. The head sticks around. It's just perfectly carbonated. It is what it's supposed to be. And it's a wonderful beer. And again, I was thinking about this beer all day in that heat of the golf course. And now I finally get to enjoy it. And it's really a fantastic beer. Steve, what are your thoughts?
I agree.
Apt analysis, Steve. Well done.
Yes, thank you. No, I was reading the description on your website, and it says it has bitterness, but I don't really think it tastes bitter. It's very smooth. The only really bite you get is from the carbonation, but it's really subtle, very smooth all the way through. It has a really has good taste to it. The initial drink of it as it goes down is really good, and then you think you're going to get something at the end, but no, it's really, really tasty. It's really even though it's in the style of Czech, it's something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we use the Magnum is what we used for bittering, but the Saaz is kind of the bulk of it, and that's I mean, if you read the description, it's kind of mild, earthy, slightly herbal, a little spicy, and it's not meant to be super bitter, obviously.
I do get that herbal, that earthy. That's probably what remains at the end of it, is that earthy taste of it.
Mm-hmm. And it's so fun. It's so fun to talk about a beer like this and to actually be able to talk about these things and pick up, because that's what our brewers want to brew this beer, and they want to talk about those subtleties, right? Those things that are like, I'm picking out, okay, I'm getting a little bit of this, but and I think where we are in the Midwest is we're seeing this kind of this trend of you just throw a bunch of, I call it shit, it's like you just throw a bunch of shit in beer. And I have my theories, and part of it is I think small breweries sort of brew a beer that didn't turn out well, but they can't dump it down the drain, so they just say, well, we'll just throw a bunch of things in it, and then over time people kind of get used to, like, oh yeah, okay, it's got marshmallow and it's got, I don't know, all the different varieties of extract,
maple, graham crackers.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that we don't, we were kind of talking about beforehand, it's not that we don't need to make some of those beers, and kind of there is definitely a group of people who are looking for those type of things, but like our brewers want to show off how technically good they are at making beer. And like a Czech Pilsner is the type of a beer that's what they want to drink. Like our brewers love this beer. They're already like, are we going to make it a third time? And we just came out with our Kolsch style last Friday, and that's another beer. This is like the third time we brewed it, and like those are the beers that they get so proud and they're so excited to get people excited about, because they're talking about these subtleties, not, man, that really does taste like a graham cracker, or that really does taste like an apple pie, or oh, it does taste like a banana smoothie. It's like, I think sometimes they kind of pull their hair out, and it's like, why are we? Oh, it's like I know.
Some people say it's nice to have a beer flavored beer.
Yeah, or and it could be a generational thing. I kind of talk about, most of us at the brewery are in our late 30s, early 40s, and we were kind of in that initial craft beer wave. Kind of those breweries that came out in California in the mid 80s, and a lot of those Oregon breweries, and Widmer, and Full Sail and some of those that Deschutes. Deschutes was the brewery that when we started, it was like if there's one brewery you could model yourselves after, and we're like Deschutes. It's like they make awesome beer. Their porter is like their flagship. I mean, obviously they have their pale ale, but it's like their porter. And so I think that was how we started, and so those are the beers that we appreciate. And we call them old man beers, right? Lawn mowing beers, whatever. And some people are kind of shocked when they find out that, like, no, our brewers want like light, easy drinking, well-made, crispy pilsners, lagers, kolsches. It's that's what they like. And so it's really cool.
All right, well let's go down. John Hill, I think you have this beer, but I think we've heard pretty much all we need to hear about the Czech Pils, and I think you've got a couple other ones. Why don't you just pick one and review one for us?
Sure. Let me go ahead and grab one. Does anybody else have the Iron Horse?
I do.
Okay,
I as well.
I am cracking that. They're definitely light. And
so the Iron Horse is the pale ale.
Yeah.
5.2%, 32 IBUs.
Yeah, it's not super West Coasty and super hoppy, but it's also definitely not a hazy. It's just nice and tasty and well balanced. I'm getting some breadiness in there, which is really nice. And then the hops are nice and round. I really like it.
I noticed right away when I opened the can, I got hit in the nose with some citrus right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just started using. Well, I shouldn't say just. About 2 years ago, we started using Citra in this beer when we first made it. So this is back when we started brewing in Fargo back in 2013. This was one of our original beers, and it was Horizon, Falconer's Flight, and then Falconer's Flight 7 Seas, and we did start adding Citra to it as well. And it's that sort of more Northwest classic American pale ale. We wanted it to be light, drinkable, kind of that tropical fruit, but not this overwhelming wave of fruitiness or haziness or and so this type of a beer again was sort of designed prior to the modern hazy era, if you will.
Yeah,
all right, good stuff.
Could definitely drink a lot of these. It's very, very good summer beer, I think.
Yeah, and this is a beer, like, sadly, this one's kind of going to be on the chopping block pretty soon. And it's like when we tell a lot of the people who know beer, and they're like, "Oh, that's like the best beer you make." And then I always say, "When's the last time you had one?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's been a while." I'm like, it's and we would, when we went into certain markets, like when we went into the Minneapolis St. Paul market, and it was like people were like, "Yeah, this is amazing." But there just wasn't. I think it's just hard because the IPA has become such this huge monstrous category, and that a pale ale has just become, it's like, oh, this weak little, like, it's just a pale ale.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think pale ale has bad press? You think pale ale?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it does. And so when we came out with our first sort of like hazy, basically we came out with, it was a hazy pale ale. And it was a lot of Mosaic. It was Citra. We won a gold at the last time we entered an award. It was the Best of Craft Beer Awards. But we were like, we can't call it a pale ale. We can't call it a hazy pale ale because people are going to be like, meh. So we had to call it we called it a session IPA, which is a pale ale, right? It's like, it's just the dumbest thing in the world. But we're like, we have to call it an IPA because otherwise people aren't going to take it seriously, or they're not going to give it a chance. They're just going to be like, meh. But for me, I know, like, because I always think about, like, when I visit a brewery, what are the things I'm looking at? Like, what I'm going to test out, okay, if I'm going to get 4 beers at a brewery, I'm going to, like, for me, a pale ale is generally one. If they make a pale ale, I'm like, you can tell pretty quickly how good they are by their pale ale. IPA, yeah, maybe, but IPAs, you can just dump a bunch of hops in them, right? And you can cover up a lot of things. For me too, if they make a porter or a stout or something, just maybe a dry Irish or even a porter, more of your standard beer, I think that's another test. And then try to find if they make a Pilsner or a Kolsch or a Blanc, something on that lighter, that whatever you want to call it, the dad beer, the old man beer. And I feel like, you can figure it out pretty quickly if you just get those 4 beers, 4 styles. and then figure out if they're decent or not, in my opinion.
Well, it's a good beer. Sorry to hear it's going away. I'm almost thinking if you called it something else, you might have a different result, because I do see, kind of an aversion to the pale ale style, and it's a shame because, I am now living in a warm weather climate. I look for, some lower ABV, more sessional beers, and this was a perfect one for where I live. But I guess you got to give the people what they want, and just part of.
It's also part of being a business, is like, yep. it's we've kind of learned too over the years is like use descriptive words in it. We just released another hazy IPA. The style we called it is a juicy IPA, and you're like, well, or tropical fruit IPA. It's like because if you can put some sort of a descriptive word in it, it's a mango or some sort of fruit. People then get more, it's a strawberry mango pale ale, then it's like, ooh, people get intrigued. But I think a lot of it is if people just say pale ale, they're just like, that sounds, I think pale ale just sounds really bland and boring, right? It's just like, bleh. But unfortunately, I think, those are some of my favorite beers, or it's just kind of like the ESB. I don't know if you guys have ever talked about those too, but it's like, there's a brewery in Duluth, Minnesota that makes probably one of the best versions around, and they've won multiple awards, and they finally had to change it. I think they just called it a pub ale because they're like, the word bitter in it scares people away, and they don't understand, the general consumer doesn't understand. Yeah, but based on history, this isn't actually like a bitter beer, it's like really light and easy drinking. But if the style technically, if you're trying to stick true to the style, it's an English special bitter. That's the style,
I think Keystone ruined that, didn't they? When they did that bitter beer campaign?
It might, honestly, It might have been, like that probably has a lot to do with it. And so then people just see bitter, and then they're like, they don't, because the general, at least especially in North Dakota, it's like, no, maybe you get on the coast and you get a more educated beer consumer, but in North Dakota, where the craft beer scene is as old as, literally we were the first one after, whatever, kind of we are the oldest operating brewery in North Dakota, and so it's like, it's just people see bitter and just go no, and you can do all the education in the world and give all the samples, but they're going to come in, they're going to look up at your menu, and they're going to see bitter and say no thanks.
All right, well, Michigan guys, who's got the wood chipper? I think it's time to go to the wood chipper.
All right. Well, there's two of us that have it, so we've split it up, and I'm gonna let John Golden start on this one.
I have one too, by the way.
So I've got a glass of the wood chipper here, and first thing I do want to say, though, like going back to the the parlaying into the Fargo name and wood chipper. Personally, I would have made that a red ale.
We did for the 20th anniversary of the movie Fargo. We did a blood orange wood chipper, and that was a lot of fun.
That's great.
Absolutely perfect. So here, let me take a quick sip of this. So this, actually, one thing I noticed about this, it's it's definitely piney. I'm not sure what the IBUs are, but I did look at the notes you had on Untappd on it, and you mentioned to use oats in it, which I find is a very unique thing to put into an IPA. It does smooth it out. It's a very soft mouthfeel, which is a little unusual for an IPA, but it doesn't impact the flavor. Just kind of the initial. I'm expecting usually IPAs to be either astringent or kind of very carbonated, and I taste this and it's like I love the flavors. I was a little bit like there's something different here, and it took me a second to figure out what it was, and I think that's the oats. But it's a very good beer. The color is beautiful. It's a little bit hazy, not too much. I almost think it's a little more towards an English IPA than an American IPA, but yet still an IPA. And if you go breadth of style on IPAs, it's on the, I want to say the lower hoppiness end or the lower IBU end, at least perceivable. I know measurable and perceivable can sometimes be totally different. And it's probably higher IBUs, but the softness from the oats kind of smooths that out. And it starts to go into like it's in that overlapping range between a hoppy pale ale and a not so hoppy IPA. But it's still a really good beer. It's like just, I mean, I like, what do you think, Doug?
Well, yeah, we had the mic off and we were discussing it kind of at length, and we both came to the conclusion that it's very reminiscent of a British IPA, which, I mean, I'm all for it. It's not as hot. There's not that hot burn that is associated with a lot of West Coast beers. As John said, that mouthfeel from the oats is actually really, really good. I mean, it's got a filling, like you take a swallow of it, it's very filling. It's not thin, but it's not burning the top of the roof of your mouth off with hops either. There's a beautiful balance in there. One of the other things we were discussing is while you guys were discussing pale ale and the demise of pale ale, and this came right to mind as like, and you brought up the Sierra Nevada pale ale, and the first time you ever had it would be like, oh my God, this is so bitter. This is so crazy. But this throws me back into that style where it actually kind of comes off of what's considered IPA now. And IPA is becoming so subjective in a lot of ways. I mean, to a point, and I'll bring this up, where I entered a IPA into a competition as a West Coast IPA, and a judge basically knocked me down a couple points because it was too bitter. And I thought, what, dude, you need to stop. Reassess your judgeship here, buddy, because that's what it's supposed to be. It wasn't like 100 plus IBU beer. I mean, it was just a normal West Coast double IPA. But I'll get back onto this one here. I think it's beautiful beer. It's really well-rounded. The color is nice. There's just a little bit of haze on it, which is fine by me. I don't judge anybody's beer by clarity, and I just don't, because I'm not a beer judge, But this is well done, I think. And as far as like, as you were talking about as a business model for the masses, this is great. I mean, I don't know that anybody could really be offended by drinking this as an IPA and think, oh my God, this is just, it's too chewy or too bitter or anything like that. And I'm going to go back to John here on this one.
Yeah, and I did want to say, like, as far as like your business model and where you're located, like you mentioned, you probably don't have the people in Fargo, the palates as well developed as the coast and some other places where, we're getting bombarded with these super, super hoppy IPAs all the time. And you're first brewery in the entire state of North Dakota. So you have to teach people how to not drink Natty Light.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason that we intentionally chose to come out with this beer first, and that was part of why the name Wood Chipper wasn't so much based on the beer. It was like, well, we want to name a beer Wood Chipper. Which one should we do? And we're like, well, let's call it the IPA. Let's have the IPA be Wood Chipper, and because we wanted to make a statement and kind of show the area that like we're going to make IPAs. Like we're not going to come out with a blonde ale first or a sort of lighter style beer. We're going to do an IPA. And
I think you've done it. I think you've done a really good job with it. And like I said, especially when you're trying to turn this area into a place that knows beer flavors and recognizes stuff, and you can't just go in there, right away with an arrogant bastard from Stone and say, "Here, try this." Yeah. Somebody who's used to drinking, macro brewery beer, it would taste that and they'd flip out. and not in a good way.
No,
so I think this is a really good, way to lure them into the world of beer.
Yeah, and it's like, and it had its challenges too, to say, okay, we're going to be a craft brewery. We got this IPA, and then you go out and sell it in Fargo, and there was definitely places that would take it, but it was just, at some point you kind of run out of, people are like, boy, there's just only so much of this beer, it's 6.7%, and we want to support you guys, and we get it, but right. what next, and maybe that's a good segue, and then we made Stone's Throw, and then that became the beer that sort of built the company, if you will. But yeah, we still make Wood Chipper. It's our number 3 beer now. Our number 2 beer actually is our summer. We make a radler, a lemon radler.
Oh, that was good.
I didn't want to send that with, just because we don't filter or pasteurize or anything, and so we do still, we're basically adding sugar back in, and so if the temperature gets too warm, they could explode. So I didn't really want to send cans out all over the place, but yeah, Stone's Throw is our number 1 beer. The Kenny's Lemonade is our radler is number 2, but Wood Chipper just keeps hanging strong, and especially not so much on the on-premise, meaning like the kegs to bars and restaurants doesn't do so well, but the off-sale, the packages and liquor stores, the Wood Chipper just keeps grinding on. It's I mean, to be honest, I'm a little surprised, and maybe it's because we called it Wood Chipper and it's Fargo, and people want to, oh my gosh, I'm going out to California and they're going to think this is hilarious, but also I think it's because it is, as the comments you guys made, is like it's a solid, well-made IPA, kind of based on that older style, that more I haven't really heard anybody call it more of an English style, but I can see the points, but it was, it's based on that, Simcoe and Chinook and Centennial and like those kind of classic hops, and right. It's going to be piney and grapefruit. It was, grapefruit and pine,
ChristopherMedia.net. When you're sick, every minute counts. So don't go anywhere. Go to DispatchHealth.com, where high-quality medical care comes directly to you. No getting out of a sick bed. No crazy driving to an emergency room. No endless paperwork. No hospital waiting rooms. Visit DispatchHealth.com to learn about our medical professionals, then make house calls. Dispatch Health is covered by Medicare and most major insurance. Go to DispatchHealth.com.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. That this happened faster than usual is due to the urgency of this pandemic and the extraordinary collaboration of dedicated scientists around the world.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
We had independent scientific reviews from a data safety monitoring board.
Overwhelmingly, it's safe for you.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS.
Remember before COVID-19, when we could go to shows or celebrate in person or have family gatherings where the only worry was when someone was going to talk politics? Let's get back to that. Let's get vaccinated. COVID-19 vaccines are safe, effective, and free. Sure, we'll have to keep wearing masks for a while, but you know what? This is the start. Go to covid19.nj.gov/vaccine to register for your vaccination. Remember traveling somewhere? Anywhere? Yeah, let's get back to that.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
We had independent scientific reviews from a data safety monitoring board.
Overwhelmingly, it's safe for you.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
We had independent scientific reviews from a data safety monitoring board.
Overwhelmingly, it's safe for you.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/vaxfacts.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
We had independent scientific reviews from a data safety monitoring board.
Overwhelmingly, it's safe for you.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/vaxfacts.
Media.net.
Yeah,
It's great.
I do want to say one thing too is that I kind of wish that Doug and I had your Pilsner here, because Pilsners are actually one of the more difficult beers to brew successfully and to be consistent from batch to batch. And I've actually, Doug and I brewed, I know for me it was my first Pilsner ever, just about 4 months ago, and it was actually Munich Helles, and it turned out like way better than I ever could have hoped for. And I know it's a difficult style to brew, and ales are easy. You pretty much throw your stuff together and throw some yeast on it, and if your temperature is a little off, so this batch might be a little more estery, this batch might be a little more phenolic or whatever, just depending on the temperature. But for lagers, you've got to maintain that very consistent fermentation temperature. So I really wish I need to figure out how I can get a bottle or a can of that somewhere in Michigan.
You just got to make a trip to Fargo. It's not that far.
Road trip.
It's going to be in the hundreds up here too. It's going to be 102 on Saturday.
Aren't you the only thing in Fargo?
No. No, and yes, we do have running water, and we have electricity, and we don't all, we don't ride.
And you don't really talk that funny, right?
Yeah, some people do. My wife gets teased a lot. She works for Bobcat Skid Steer Company. Their headquarters are here, and she works for them and travels quite a bit. And she gets compared to some cartoon characters from time to time, and there are definitely people who they're stereotyped for a reason, right?
We can just travel north to the UP and hear the same thing, or an aberration of it. It's very Scandinavian, Finnish.
A lot of Finnish,
Finns and Swedes and
Swedes,
German,
So you'll hear a lot of it like around Duluth and in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
A lot of saunas and bastus.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
it's my final comments. It's a great, what I would say, tweener beer. It's between everything else that's out there on the shelves, and that's why I would probably search it out and buy it, just because of that. It's comforting, and it's not too far in one direction or the other.
Amen. So I just wanted to add, I met Aaron on my trip to Fargo, and I was really impressed. I had no idea what to expect. I had actually gone to Bismarck, North Dakota, a few weeks earlier. And North Dakota might surprise you. It was actually, I had a great time. I actually had my first stone's throw in Grand Forks when I was visiting with my distributor there. And that was a few days before I met with you, Aaron. And no, I had a great time up there, man, guys. I'd do a beer weekend there all day long. I mean, there was, there's a couple other good breweries in the area too. And, these guys were first, and I like what they do. And Fargo's is it's kind of a sleeper town. I really enjoyed my time up there, and I didn't really have much expectations, and I can't wait to go back. Great group of guys with my distributor up there too. Got a shout out to Ryan up there, who introduced me to Aaron and distributes Fargo Brewing in Fargo. So shout out to Bergseth Brothers and their crew. certainly had a great time at the Empire late night too with
the Dirty E.
So that's where I had a grain belt.
Yeah, we call that primo up here. Yeah, the old grain belt primo. It's on the sweeter side for sure.
Yep. When it's time for that 8th beer of the night, you can't go wrong with a grain belt.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the unofficial slogan of Fargo is like, Fargo, not as shitty as you think. It's, but that is a reaction a lot of people have. I know we had a CNN crew come up to Fargo to shoot kind of a story. So they all came from Atlanta. And all of them were just kind of like blown away. And they did, like if you come in January, I'm not going to lie, don't come to Fargo in January. That's not the time to visit. It's cold and windy and it kind of, it's just not a good time. But you come up in the spring or the summer and that entire crew was just blown away. And they were like, I think we're going to try to come back to Fargo just because they just enjoyed it so much. And I don't think people understand that there's like this urban population in Fargo. You get into Western North Dakota, and it's maybe some of what you think it will be, but Fargo, we're on the cross sections of I-29 and I-94, so interstate. In between. I mean, you think about it: Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and then you're heading out west, or I-29. Takes you to Winnipeg, Canada, all the way down to I believe it ends in Texas somewhere. Quote me on that, but. And there's 3 universities here and a pretty diversified economy now. And it's not as shitty as you think it is.
No, you know what? And I always said I would never go there in the winter. But when I went to Grand Forks, by the time I left, I was convinced I need to go up there during hockey season because they got a great program up there. And then down in Fargo, you want to go during football season. Because
that's accurate. North Dakota State Bison.
The Bison, and I actually got my son his jersey for number 5 that was just drafted. North Dakota State, of course, as an Eagles fan, I'm really sorry that things didn't work out with Carson Wentz, but I will come up and catch a football game and maybe a hockey game in Grand Forks. I think that would be a great weekend there. Well, let's talk about Stones Throw.
Hold on, as far as hockey goes, though.
What's that?
Michigan Tech Huskies. As far as hockey goes, Michigan Tech Huskies rule. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know. UND's got a pretty good program up there in Grand Forks, and my distributor there actually took me on a drive around the facility. And one thing I was impressed by is he showed me where the visiting team bus actually goes down a ramp underneath the ground and drops the team off, like right by their locker room, so they don't have to endure the sub-zero temperatures in the winter. I mean, that's rolling out the red carpet.
Well, I'm just happy that my alma mater, Kansas State, hired the NDSU head coach. And
Chris Kleiman. He seems like he's doing a nice job there.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up Michigan Tech, and it looks like 1975 was the last national championship, huh?
Oh, shots fired.
Boy, that's a long time. I wasn't even born yet, guys. I was born in 1983.
Okay, so how many Hall of Fame players do you guys have?
Oh, I don't know. And my next-door neighbor actually played hockey at UND. He was Mr. Hockey Wisconsin back. He's 31 now.
Have you ever heard of the Esposito brothers?
Esposito. No, I don't really. I like
Phil
basketball.
Phil and Tony.
I like real sports like basketball, not.
And come on.
So all the talented athletes actually play basketball. I mean, it's think about it. You got to put a helmet on your face and go skate around on the ice and go hit each other. It's like, well, that's pretty. That's not very fun in my book. The real athletes. The good-looking athletes, of course, don't play basketball.
All right, guys, let's get back to beer.
To the real men who play hockey. The real men play hockey.
Stones throw from the Fargo Brewing to the North Dakota State Field where Trey Lance played. Let's get back to Stones Throw Scottish Ale, #1 seller for Fargo Brewing Company. Who's got a Stones Throw to review for us?
We're sitting with Stones Throw, but let's switch. Somebody else go, and then we're going to come back.
Yeah, go ahead, Christopher. I think you have a Stones Throw.
I do not. I had an Iron Horse.
Oh, okay. He had the Iron Horse. Go to East Coast.
John Hill.
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay, I don't have one of those, so.
And gosh, you just don't see Scottish ales anymore. I remember we went to a share this weekend. We had like 60, 70 beers, and there was nary a Scottish ale to be found. It's so fun to have one. It's been months probably since I've had a Scottish ale.
Yes, and we can maybe go back to John Golden a second to tell the difference between Scotch ale and Scottish ale, because it's pretty big, mostly having to do with ABV, right?
Well, it has to do with ABV, but it also has to do with so a Scotch ale, also known as a wee heavy, is actually a lot more complex, a lot darker. It has a very caramely component to it, versus a Scotch ale is much, much lighter. There are variations in Scotch ales. There's a lot of times they were referred to by a certain shilling, like a 30 shilling, 60 shilling, 90 shilling. And that actually had to do with the cost, but it also at the same time had to do with the alcohol content.
Which is directly correlated to cost. The more ingredients you put into a beer, the more expensive it is.
Well, and I believe the shilling designation came from the taxation from the British government. The higher the ABV, the more tax they put on it.
Yeah.
So the lower the shillings, the lower the taxes, and the lower the ABV.
Yep. So the lower shilling Scottish ales were like 2.5% or something like that, I think.
And the other thing, having visited Scotland, they like to throw down all day there, so they would rather have a lower ABV beer that they can drink all day than have a wee heavy that you have 3 of them and you're falling on the floor.
Yeah, which is very comparable to North Dakota, I will say.
Yeah,
I saw a few people on the floor in the Empire.
Yeah, I was going to say, and if you want to go find some beer drinking, go to a North Dakota hockey game, and you will see lots of beer drinking.
Yeah, but one of the big things though with the Scotch ale too, other than the very caramely flavor, is you're going to get much more like dark stone fruit flavors. You're going to get plums and raisins and figs, versus the typical Scotch ales are definitely.
You mean
much
Scottish
lighter.
ale?
The Scottish ale, excuse me, are lighter beers and kind of more. Actually, they're kind of more similar to like an ESB than they are to like an actual wee heavy. So they're and both delicious beers. Although I'm a particular fan of the wee heavy. So.
Well, thank you for that education. Let's go back to John Hill and let him tell us about the beer he's tasting.
No, I think that that was a pretty good rundown.
Absolutely.
I love Scotch and Scottish ales.
Me too.
Very low bitterness. You're getting a lot of malt, and so it's got that nice malt flavor. But this thing is 4.5% ABV, so you could drink this all day, but it's not gonna be like drinking water, like you're drinking, a super light lager. It's you can taste it, and it sticks around a little bit. I like it. And like I said, you just don't see these very often anymore. It's kind of a shame.
Well, you can see it all over North Dakota because, again, I discovered it in Grand Forks before I even made my way to Fargo. And I know Dugout and I, when we worked for Scottish in Newcastle, had McEwen's Scotch Ale, which is more of a wee heavy, a higher ABV. But when I did visit Edinburgh, we had plenty of those, 30, 40 shilling, and those are kind of similar to this, a crushable yet flavorful beer, nice malty, darker beer with a very pleasant flavor, toasty malt.
Very enjoyable and a big change of pace from the giant pastry stouts and quadruple dry hop hazy IPAs. It's refreshing. I like it.
So I think we've sampled all the beers that we have, and I do appreciate Aaron you gifting those to me, so I was able to share them with everybody. I would like you to tell us a little bit about your tap room, because it was one of the coolest tap rooms I've ever been in, and I know it's not all finished yet. It's still kind of under construction, but I loved what I saw, and I loved the vision. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your enhancements to your tap room?
Sure. So we kind of started with, we started doing concerts in our parking lot 7 years ago. And we had a band called Lucero from, I think they're from, I can't remember if it's Memphis or, anyway, they came up and there was about 700 people at that concert, and we all kind of went, huh, that's interesting. And we developed this relationship with this concert promoter, and the company is called Jade Presents. The gentleman who started his name is Jade. First name is Jade. And we just started doing these concerts, and we're like, huh, this is interesting. And we just sort of felt, we were built on that distribution model as a brewery, like, we're going to make it. And, people in this area, people didn't know what tap rooms were and what growlers were. And we're like, well, we got to get the beer where the people are. And then that sort of changed over time. And then we started doing these concerts and going, people come in for concerts. So in the meantime, we'd sort of got this, like, we saw so many breweries run out of room so quickly, and we weren't going to make that mistake, and we didn't. We had like 22,000 square feet, and we were going to fill it up with tanks and brew 25,000 barrels a year. And, then now there was 8,500 breweries in the country. So we kind of went, okay, well, we either need to move and go to a smaller, more retail-friendly, more walkable space closer to downtown, or we use the space we have. And so we started kind of working with this concert promoter gentleman, and we're like, well, we need to find a way to do concerts inside the building. We have the space, let's do them inside. So then over time, he ended up buying out those two original brother partners, and like, okay, so we're going to have a concert hall, and then we're like, that's all we need. And he's like, we need a new tap room. And we're like, no, we can't do that. Well, it kind of morphed into this thing. We ended up getting a call from a coffee roaster who his lease was up, and he's like, hey, would you guys ever consider having a coffee bar retail space in your building? He's like, I've seen this in Portland and in Austin, Texas. And we're like, oh, that's a cool idea. And so we talked to this Jade, partner and said, hey, what do you think of this idea? And he goes, well, actually, he said, I had an idea for another concept that I've seen in other markets where I wanted to do coffee, a tattoo shop, and a barber shop. And he's like, what if we do that at the brewery? And we were like, well, we have the space, and we're like, huh, that's an interesting idea. And so that's kind of where the whole idea developed. So we do, first and foremost, we have a concert venue that, we probably will hold about 300 people. We did build a new tap room, threw in some garage doors, faces south, put in an awesome patio. Then there is a little space. Again, is designed for coffee, but we're kind of in the works, talking to somebody who maybe is going to do wine, cider, coffee smoothies, so some non-alcoholic, but then would maybe do wine and cider, which would be nice. And then there is a barber shop, and so our barbers operating. The tattoo thing didn't really end up working out, so for now it's just kind of a private lounge. But you never know. Someday, if there is some sort of a tenant we were talking about, it'd be nice to have something that would bring, like a like-minded business, I guess, is that's kind of what we've been saying too. It's like this craft coalition, where it's like all these businesses that kind of share a similar customer base. So that's why tattoo, barber, coffee, beer, and then we're still working on essentially a food truck kind of deal. So we won't operate it, but there'll be another operating partner. They'll pay rent. Jade had a 1948 Spartan trailer. It looks like an Airstream. So we're trying to figure out how to make that work, and I just think it's not going to be enough space. So now we're working on a train shipping container, I guess, and trying to make that into a kitchen. So that way, you have beer, coffee, wine, cider, music, or any sort of entertainment, barber, food, and then maybe when the legalization of marijuana hits North Dakota, that little back room could be a dispensary. So then you'd kind of have all of those things covered, if you will. The Craft Coalition. What more do you need?
Chris has another podcast that might be interested in talking to you about that segment.
Right.
About that part, yeah. And it's and I've spent some time in different places in the country, and some people kind of laugh or kind of blow it off, and I'm like, there's a massive market and a wave coming, and I think the big breweries are scared of it, right? Because they're like, whoa, but I'm like, the craft breweries, it kind of fits, if you will. and or seems to complement it a little better. But maybe someday that's a down the road. For now, it's not legal in North Dakota, so it's kind of pointless anyway. But
Sweetwater down here in Atlanta actually got acquired by a marijuana company.
Mm-hmm.
They're just getting ready. It's cool. One question about your neighbors: have you guys done collaborations? Probably not so much with the barbershop, but with the coffee company. Have you done any coffee beers with them?
Oh, well, the vendor that was supposed to go in there originally, yeah, we've done quite a few different beers. I'm trying to think of our latest one. We did a coffee pilsner. It was super nice. Or then we did like a coffee cake beer. One of our very first ones we did, it was I believe it was a porter. It was a variation of our porter, but it was a coffee vanilla porter that was extremely popular. And yeah, so yes, we've worked with that particular person quite a bit. Now our project kind of stalled out a little bit, and I think he realized he roasts as well, and I think he realized that he didn't want to operate a retail location anymore. He's just going to continue roasting. And then we ran into a pandemic, and it's not very easy to find a coffee operator in a building that doesn't have a drive-through during a pandemic when people can't come and sit and have a cup of coffee.
That makes
sense. That was a challenge, but yeah, we'll see. But yes, we love. So we actually, the coffee we drink at the brewery, we buy from this roaster, and in my opinion, the best roaster in the area. And that's what we grind and roast every morning. And so it's usually, I always tell people, you guys will probably understand, it's coffee by morning and beer by later morning. Yeah.
Could be worse. Could be worse.
A lot of coffee, a lot of beer. Exactly.
Well, I can say that the concert venue looked awesome. I loved having the barber there. Next time I'm there, I got a haircut there. It's really a cool facility. But what I really wanted to visit the next time there, Aaron, is the Brewers Bar.
Mm-hmm.
That little Brewers Bar you have, and that's where I'll keep you stocked with some Rebel.
Perfect.
So, speaking of that, before we wrap it up, Doug, you had a homebrew that was very interesting. That I think at least Chris has one to review. Want to talk about the homebrew that you had?
Well, Chris had two. I'm not sure what he has, so I'd like to hear Chris's opinion on it. If he's
be the green cap, which was the one with maple in it.
Yes,
and then the orange cap. What did you say this was? Pale ale.
That's a Czech Pilsner.
Or Czech Pilsner. Okay. Well, I'm rinsing out my glass here. I just finished my.
Not to put you on the spot, but
my Iron Horse.
Yeah, we were talking about the old ale a little bit in the beginning, so I'd like to hear your take on that one. That's the green cap.
Let's get this poured.
Well, he's getting that poured. Aaron, I'm just curious, where all do you guys distribute to?
So, well, first of all, thanks for sending me your guys' homebrew so I could sample beer and give you, critique your beer. But we currently are all of North Dakota, most of South Dakota, and the western half of Minnesota and Omaha, Nebraska, because we have a customer down there, a retail partner who kind of mandates our beer. At our peak, we had 18 wholesalers. So we were all of North Dakota, all of South Dakota, all of Minnesota, and western Wisconsin. And then I was up in Winnipeg looking at that market. As you Michiganders know, it's like Minnesota went from 12 breweries to I think they got to be close to 200 now. And, wow. And a lot of that stuff people don't realize is laws change. So back when we started in Minnesota, you had two choices to operate as a brewery. You could basically be a brew pub, so you could sell beer pints on site, and most of them would brew and sell on site, have a restaurant, food, or you could be a distribution brewery. So like Shell's and Summit, or some of those older, they're more established ones that were distribution breweries. Well, Surly came along, a few years before we started and lobbied very hard and basically got a bill passed that then allowed breweries to sell pints on site, basically changed that whole law. And they called it, I think, they referred to it as the Surly bill. So all of a sudden, Minnesota went from 12 breweries, just overnight, just rapid fire breweries opening, because now you could sell pints directly, and you could sell to wholesalers, and you could kind of do more things. And Minnesota just exploded. And so we went into the Minneapolis-St. Paul market when we were up 26% the one year. And by the end of the next year, we were not even in the market anymore. We were just out. And it just got so competitive. And it was the same, thankfully, I was talking to, I actually went to college with the guys who started Fulton Brewing out of Minneapolis. And so they were kind of a nice, call them and ask their experience. And, you'd kind of say, how's Wisconsin doing? And they'd be like, no, not good. And they'd be like, okay, how's Iowa doing? Not good. How's Surly doing in Chicago? Nah, not very well. And you're like, okay, if those breweries aren't doing well in those states, who's going to give a shit about Fargo Brewing? How are we going to be the one that they pick? And
yeah, you're going to end up in the warm shelf next to the blower on the cooler. So
yeah,
you get extra toasty. Your beer gets a little warmed up even more so, and you'll become a shelf turd.
It's kind of this 100-mile radius thing, and it's like because it's like the whole concept of a craft brewery is that it's a craft local thing, and that you get, like, John came and visited. It's like when you're in our space, like, that's our home. That's where we work. That's where we create our beer. And you're like, oh, this is cool. I like this. I connect with this. Well, if you never come to our brewery, it's hard. The only way you're connecting with us is through our marketing or our, names. And yeah, you might pick it and go, yeah, wood chipper, that's a really nice beer. But in a sea of how many options in that liquor store, how many times are you going to keep going back to that beer? Probably not too often, right? You're probably going to go, oh, there's a new one I haven't tried yet. Oh, there's another new one I haven't tried yet, and because you guys are talking about what did you just untap last night, and it's this whole thing of like, how many, I've got 2,500 unique check-ins, and you're not going back to the beer that's necessarily you really like. You're going to try it and say, I like it. What's next? What else you got? What's new? So
what do they say? Ticker's going to tick, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I've kind of been on this mission and kind of trying to explain to our employees is like we're in it. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're in this for the long haul, and it's difficult being the first one of its kind. In North Dakota and kind of in this market. And it doesn't happen overnight. And thankfully, we found a beer like Stone's Throw that kind of just hit the palates right of North Dakotans. And they were like, that's a beer. I can drink pitchers of that beer. It's different enough. Like we make a Helles Lager on a regular basis, and we actually won a bronze medal at GABF. I think we're the only modern North Dakota brewery to win a GABF medal. And we were like, oh, this is it. We got this light lager, and it's a great beer, and we won a medal. And you put it on tap next to the domestic lights, and nobody buys it because it's too close to those domestic lights, and those domestic lights are going to be cheaper. They're going to get a pitcher special on it. And in North Dakota, people will change the beer they drink. I've literally heard in up near Grand Forks that they used to buy this XYZ brand, and that went up 25 cents per case, and that person switched to a different brand because they didn't want to pay an extra quarter per case. And so you're kind of dealing with this uphill battle in North Dakota where it's like, okay, people are thrifty, stingy, whatever you want to call it, but they'll drink something and they'll support it, but they can't compare it to that thing that they're trying to save a quarter on. And so if you give them something a little different, or like Stone's Throw, the perception of Stone's Throw is that it's like, oh my God, it's this big 7% beer. I can't have too many of those. It's a heavy beer. It's a dark beer. And when I tell people it's 4.5% ABV, and they're like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, what do you drink? Keystone Light. Keystone Light is about 4.1%.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Did you know that Budweiser is 5%? So if you drink a Budweiser, that's technically more alcohol than a Stone's Throw. Really? Yeah. Oh, well, it just felt like, well, yeah, I know. It feels bigger because there's all these different malts in it. There's oats in it.
More carbs on the Bud.
Yeah. And so, it's just trying to get people to kind of understand that. And And it hasn't been an easy journey. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's been a dream and everything's been wonderful, but it's, with our new space and seeing people come in, it's kind of a rewarding feeling to like try to bring something to this area, trying to bring people, bring something home instead of saying, well, screw it, I'm just going to move to Portland or Michigan, or, that's where people really appreciate beer. And it's like, well, no, why don't we get, our friends and family? We'll have to educate them. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of dedication and sacrifice, but hopefully it pays off someday. And it seems like we're getting there. Our original mission was to bring craft beer to the heartland. And in some sense, we sort of feel like mission accomplished, like we accomplished our original goal. And it's kind of like, well, now what do we do? Where do we go? And that's part of this whole new taproom thing is kind of, now it's a little, when we started, it was all about the beer, right? We had to make good quality beer. Otherwise, we weren't going to get people to switch from their domestic lights. And we feel like we've done that. And so now it's the next journey, the next chapter, and we'll see how that goes.
Well, we certainly have enjoyed your quality beers, and I look forward to my next trip up there, and hopefully some of you other guys will someday make your way up to Fargo. And if you do, please seek out Fargo Brewing Company and get a haircut while you're at it.
yeah, and let John know if you guys are coming. Look me up. I'm not always around, but I would be happy to give you guys a tour and give you as much time as I can.
And appreciate it, and we appreciate your time tonight.
I'll get your info from John and send you these couple beers that we sampled tonight, the couple home brews, so that
all
you
right,
kind of be in the loop on what's going on here. But Christopher, you got them beers poured?
Yes. Well, I got the I poured the what was the green cap? What style was it? It's the bourbon barrel.
I think it was the old ale, wasn't it?
Yeah, old ale.
That's the bourbon barrel aged maple old ale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I could tell you, I poured it. It's got a nice copper color here. A creamy white head on it. You put your nose in it. I tell you, if I had my eyes closed, I'd glass of bourbon. Like the bourbon hits you really like it punches you right in the nose. It's pretty strong, but you taste it. Like I was waiting to get that, the shudder you get when you do a shot, and then that maple comes in right at the end and mellows it out, and that's really good. Now as it's getting warmer, the bourbon's kind of kicking up here. It's still on the front, but it smells like bourbon, and then the maple just chills it out. This is another home run, Doug.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had it earlier, and my kind of first impressions were it's like there's a really good wood character, and there's some vanilla, maple, even a faint bit of caramel. But real good beer.
Yeah.
Are we tasting the Czech Pilsner too, or is that for another day? Or
that's a special beer for me for the golf course.
All right.
We'll save that.
Yeah, save that. I'll ship a couple of these Czech Pilsners out to you guys. And as well as, and I've got to get the beer gun out and get, because that old ale is that's just untapped. That's just come into its own on carbonation. And it really could use another month or two in a bottle and just sit and mellow out, and everything can kind of blend together. But the funny thing is, I brewed that beer in December.
Wow!
So here we are. It's been all these months in a Motor City gas barrel that had been used a few times. So the bourbon wasn't as prevalent, and I needed to let it sit in there for a little while longer. But I'm happy with the way it turned out. I think it just, like I said, it just needs a little bit of maturing and a little aging in the bottle, and it'll be outstanding.
And as a fan of bourbon, I love it.
Yeah.
But I'm not drinking beer, I'm drinking bourbon.
It's a Motor City gas barrel, and then I think there might be some Woodford Reserve.
That's my favorite.
Soaked
that's my
chips
favorite
that
of all
might
time.
have added their way into the whole mix.
They
might have. Yeah. Because I pulled this after 3 months in a couple times used barrel, and I was like, I'm not happy with where the bourbon sits. And I'd had some charred oak chips that were sitting in Woodford Reserve for about 3 or 4 months.
Ooh.
And I'm like, well, this is the time to use them, you know. And I only kept them in there for about 4 or 5 days just to kind of get it to where I wanted it, you know.
Mm-hmm. That might be why I like it so much. Woodford's my favorite bourbon. So,
and that's where that punch on the nose catches you too. You know, I think with some aging, that little nose punch will probably meld in a little bit, which won't be the worst thing.
But I tell you,
we'll see.
As it gets warmer, I'm getting some of the maple on the nose now too. As it warms up, this is one of those that I'm sure you know you made it. This seems to be as this gets warmer, so much more is going on with this.
Oh yeah. There's tons of layers, and that's some really good maple syrup from Michigan. So yeah, I was really pleased with that, and it took a long time to make. You know, when you got 6-7 months into a beer, you're like 5-6 months into a beer, you're thinking, Jesus, did I just mess this up, you know? But I don't think I did. So
sounds awesome, man. I hope you can send me one.
Yeah, JR, of course. Yeah, I gotta get a few of them off to you. You got a gin barrel golden ale, a Belgian golden ale coming too. That I think will blow your doors off.
Awesome. Well, just I know I already told you I brewed my British bitter for a competition in my homebrew club. I did get a bronze medal for that, so I got my first homebrewing medal. So proud of that. And
that's awesome. That's killer.
Yeah, looking forward to brewing another batch maybe this weekend. It's going to be tough to chill the wort at 100 degrees in Arizona, but we'll make it happen.
You'll get it. You'll get it down. I mean, plate chillers and ice, you know.
Yep. Well, anybody else final comments before we head to Mexico City? I do want to.
Yeah, I don't. Did we actually review the Stone's Throw?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Doug and I had it, but I didn't do it. But I just want to say it's.
Yeah, John Hill reviewed it.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at the Scottish ales, and near as I can feel that this doesn't specify, but to me it really is a very good the dark Scottish ale or the heavy, which I know it's the color doesn't actually. It's funny because the Scottish ale light is actually considered the darkest, but it's the less body. But really, really good beer. I was very happy with that. So, and I will, John. I'll probably get with Doug and also send you. I've got a black IPA that I've recently made, and then this Munich Helles that I'll see if I can get thrown in the same shipment with Doug and get that out to you.
With the Kunin beers.
Yeah, with the Kunin beers that we slowly keep drinking.
Well, yeah, save those.
There's a bunch. There's still a bunch. Trust me.
All right, everybody. Well, I do have one quick story before we go head to Mexico City. My Nevada distributor, who I used to work with years ago in a previous life when I worked for Heineken, I actually had a kickoff meeting with him. They were launching our Rebel Hard Coffee in Nevada. And Kevin, my buddy Kevin, somehow we got in the topic of, I talked about mentioning the Beer Nuts podcast. He goes, "What a minute, you do the Beer Nuts podcast?" He goes, "I listen to that." Oh, wow. This is a guy that I've known for years and years, and he never knew it was me. So good to know that there's beer people out there listening to us. And, he couldn't believe it. He showed me his phone. He goes, "Yeah, look, I just listened to JR's birthday beers, one of our recent episodes." So that was kind of cool. So shout out to K-Dub, Kevin Wilk in Las Vegas, and we had a really good time up there, and was really happy to learn that he has been actually a long-time listener and never knew it was me on the show. So
that's great to hear.
And also my buddy Kyle, my brand manager up there. Shout out to him. Promised those guys I would mention, a loyal listener. Wilk, appreciate you listening. Keep listening, and perhaps one day we'll pick one of your local beers and do a show up on some Nevada beers. But really want to thank Aaron for taking the time to join us. Had a great time at your brewery. Love your beers, and hope to see you on my next trip up there. So thank you very much for your time, and really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, you're a good guest too, man. It's nice when the guest does the heavy lifting, and it's your brewery sounds exciting. What you're going to open up there. I like where your head's at there. It could be the future of where brew pubs are going.
Well, it's interesting that what they're doing, which is more traditional styles, seems to be what may be catching on a little bit more. I think people may be eventually tiring of the giant pastry stouts and the 12% hazy IPA. We had a lager brewery open up down here that they specialize in lagers. They're doing great business. So I hope there's more of it.
Amen. All right, everybody. Well, that about does it for this episode. So, Chris, you want to tell us where to download and contribute and everything, and then I'll take us to Mexico City.
Yep. Just follow us on social media. Like us on Facebook. We are on Twitter at the Beer Nuts or at Beer Nuts Podcast. Find us on Instagram as well. It's the same thing. Always email us beernutspodcast at ChristopherMedia.net. Head to ChristopherMedia.net. Hit the PayPal button if you want to just give us cash outright, or hit the Amazon button if you want to buy something from Amazon and help us out. Doesn't add anything to your bill, and everybody wins. And wherever you listen to us, we're everywhere. We're on YouTube now as well. Please rate us and review us. That is how people find new things now, whether it's a podcast or they're trying to buy something off Amazon. People read ratings and reviews. So if you like the show, give us a rating and review and help other people find the show. Other than that, JR, I believe it's time to go down south.
All right, then. As they say in old Mexico City, A-M-F.
Hey guys, I'm Greg T. If you're suffering from back pain at home from sitting a long time, maybe lifting, even working on the job, the New York Spine Institute offers comprehensive pain management care by New York's top consultants. Their on-site spine experts take a holistic approach to back pain management and tailor an individualized plan to meet your specific needs, on and off the job. New York Spine Institute, better treatment for a better life. To schedule an appointment like I did, dial pound 250 on your mobile phone and say the keywords no pain. That's pound 250, keyword no pain.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. That this happened faster than usual is due to the urgency of this pandemic and the extraordinary collaboration of dedicated scientists around the world.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS.
The COVID-19 vaccines were developed and tested within stringent guidelines from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. That this happened faster than usual is due to the urgency of this pandemic and the extraordinary collaboration of dedicated scientists around the world.
Hear more from New Jersey doctors about COVID-19 at nj.gov/health/vaxfax. That's nj.gov/health/VAXFACTS.
ChristopherMedia.net